Park Yuna woke up at the same time she always did. The alarm on her small bed made a soft sound, and she opened her eyes to look at the metal ceiling above her. 3 months. She had been living on orbital station Vera 7 for 3 months now. She still was not used to waking up in space. She got out of bed and walked to the tiny window in her room. Outside, she could see the black emptiness of space, filled with distant stars. A large purple planet floated far below the station. It was beautiful, but Yuna did not have time to look at it for long. She had work to do. Yuna was a maintenance technician. That was a fancy way of saying she fixed things that broke. Pipes, vents, cooling systems, heating systems. If something stopped working on the station, people like her made it work again. It was not an exciting job. Nobody noticed her when things worked well. They only called her when something went wrong. She put on her gray work uniform and picked up her tool bag. It was heavy, filled with wrenches, sealants, oxygen canisters for welding, and many other things she might need during the day. She walked out of her small room and into the busy corridor of the station. Vera 7 was a big place. Thousands of beings lived and worked here. Humans were only a small part of the population. Most of the station was filled with aliens from dozens of different species. Yuna passed by tall Vorin with their hard gray skin. She walked around a group of small Keeli who moved together like a school of fish. A artillery merchant nodded at her as she passed his shop. Yuna nodded back politely, but she did not stop to talk. She never did. She was not here to make friends or explore the galaxy. She was here to work, save money, and maybe one day go back to Earth with enough to buy a small house near the mountains. That was her dream. A simple dream for a simple woman. Her communication device made a noise. She looked at it and saw a work order. There was a cooling problem in the education wing. The system was not working properly, and the temperature was rising. She needed to go fix it. Yuna walked through the station for almost 20 minutes before she reached the education wing. This part of the station was used for teaching and cultural exchange programs. Different species sent their young ones here to learn about each other. It was supposed to help everyone get along better. When she arrived, she saw a group of Tillery children sitting in a large room. There were 26 of them, all very young. Their skin was a soft blue color, almost see-through, and they had 4 thin arms each. They looked fragile, like they might break if you touched them too hard. An older Tillery stood at the front of the room. He was their teacher. The teacher, whose name was Kovin, was showing the children pictures on a large screen. The pictures were of Earth, mountains, oceans, cities. The children watched with big silver eyes, making soft sounds of wonder. Yuna smiled a little as she walked past them, toward the cooling unit in the back of the room. She liked seeing children learn, even alien children. It reminded her of her own school days back on Earth. Sitting in a classroom and dreaming about the stars, she opened the panel of the cooling unit and started to look for the problem. It was probably just a blocked filter or a loose connection. Nothing serious. She could fix it in 10 minutes and be on her way. But then the alarm started. The sound was loud and terrible. Red lights began to flash on the walls. Yuna dropped her tool and stood up quickly. She had heard alarms before on the station, but never this kind. This was the emergency alarm. The worst kind. A voice came through the speakers. It spoke in the common galactic language that everyone on the station understood. Warning. Atmospheric failure in education sector. Toxic gas leak detected. Emergency bulkheads closing. All personnel evacuate immediately. Yuna ran toward the door, but she was too slow. The heavy metal bulkhead slammed down in front of her with a loud crash. She hit it with her hands, but it did not move. She was locked in. She turned around and saw the Tillari children. They were screaming, their thin voices high and scared. Kovin, the teacher, was trying to calm them down, but his own face showed fear. He looked at Yuna with desperate eyes, and then Yuna smelled it. A sharp, chemical smell that burned the inside of her nose. The toxic gas was already coming into the room through the vents. She watched in horror as the first Tillari child collapsed. Then another, and another. Their fragile bodies could not handle the poison. They fell to the floor like flowers in a storm. their blue skin turning pale. Kovin grabbed 3 of the children and held them against his chest. He was coughing, his thin body shaking. "Please," he said to Yuna, "please help them." Yuna felt fear. Real, cold fear that made her hands shake. She was not a hero. She was not a soldier or a doctor. She fixed pipes. She fixed vents. What could she do against poison gas? But then she remembered something. Something she had learned during her training before coming to the station. This type of gas, the nitrogen compound that was now filling the room, was dangerous to most species within minutes. But humans were different. Humans could survive in it for up to 40 minutes before it became deadly. 40 minutes. That was how much time she had. She did not think anymore. She just moved. Yuna ran to her tool bag and opened it. She pulled out the oxygen canisters she used for welding work. They were small, but they held clean air. She grabbed the thermal blankets she always carried for emergencies. She tore them into pieces with her bare hands, her fingers working faster than they ever had before. She made a mask from the blanket pieces. Wrapping it around the face of the first fallen child, she pressed the oxygen canister to its mouth and released a small burst of clean air. The child's silver eyes flickered. Still alive, she moved to the next child. And the next, and the next. The gas burned her eyes and made her throat feel like fire, but she did not stop. She could not stop. These were children. They were scared and dying. She was the only one who could help them. Kovin collapsed in front of her, the 3 children falling from his arms. He was not breathing. Yuna dropped to her knees beside him. She had taken a first aid course back on Earth. She knew how to do chest compressions on humans. But Talari had 4 lungs, not 2. She pressed her hands against his chest anyway. She pressed hard and fast, moving her hands to different spots, trying to find where his lungs were. She did not know if she was doing it right. She just knew she had to try. His eyes opened. Yuna let out a breath she did not know she was holding. She helped him sit up, then pressed an oxygen mask to his face before moving on to help more children. The rescue teams were coming. She knew they were coming. She just had to keep everyone alive until they arrived. She sealed the vents with industrial foam from her bag, breaking 17 station rules in the process. She did not care. Rules could not save these children. Only she could. When the rescue team finally cut through the bulkhead door, they found something they did not expect. They found a human woman sitting in the middle of the room, covered in sweat and chemical burns. Surrounded by 26 Talari children, every single one of them was alive. The rescue team stood frozen at the broken door. They were wearing heavy suits to protect them from the gas. And they carried advanced medical equipment that cost more than Yuna would earn in 10 years. But they did not move. They just stared at her. Why? Yuna looked up at them with tired eyes. Her skin was red and painful from the chemical burns. Her throat felt like someone had rubbed it with sandpaper. Every breath hurt, but she managed to speak. "The children need medical help," she said. Her voice was rough and weak. "Some of them are still having trouble breathing." The team leader, a tall Vorin with dark gray skin, finally moved. He spoke quickly into his communication device, calling for more medical teams. Then he walked toward Yuna and looked down at her with an expression she could not read. "You are human," he said. It was not a question. "Yes," Yuna replied. "You stayed in the gas." "For how long?" Yuna tried to remember. Time had felt strange in that room, moving too fast and too slow at the same time. "I do not know. Maybe 30 minutes. Maybe more." The Vorin made a sound that might have been surprise. "That should have killed you." "I know," Yuna said. And then she fell forward as darkness took her. She woke up in the station's medical bay. The lights were too bright, and everything smelled clean and strange. She was lying on a soft bed, and there were tubes connected to her arms. A medical robot floated nearby, checking her vital signs. Yuna tried to sit up, but pain shot through her body and she fell back down. A human doctor appeared beside her bed. He was a young man with a kind face and gentle hands. "Easy," he said. "You need to rest." "Your body went through a lot." "The children," Yuna said immediately. "Are they okay?" Did they all survive? The doctor smiled. Yes, all 26 of them. And the teacher too. You saved them all. Yuna closed her eyes and felt tears running down her face. She did not know why she was crying. Maybe it was relief. Maybe it was the pain. Maybe it was just too many feelings all at once. You have some chemical burns on your skin and damage to your lungs, the doctor continued. Nothing permanent. You will heal completely in a few weeks. You were very lucky. Lucky. Yuna almost laughed at that word. She did not feel lucky. She felt exhausted and scared and confused, but she was alive. And more importantly, those children were alive. She stayed in the medical bay for 3 days. During that time, many people came to see her. First came other humans who worked on the station. They brought her flowers from the station's garden and snacks from Earth that were hard to find in this part of space. They told her she was a hero. Yuna did not feel like a hero. She felt like a woman who had done what anyone would do in that situation. She could not understand why everyone was making such a big deal about it. Then the station commander came. He was an old Keeley with bright orange scales and wise eyes. He sat beside her bed and spoke to her for a long time. He thanked her for her quick thinking and her bravery. He told her that her actions had prevented a terrible tragedy that could have damaged the relationship between humans and Tillery for generations. Why, Yuna did not know what to say to that. She had not been thinking about relationships between species when she was making masks out of torn blankets. She'd only been thinking about the scared children who needed help. On the 4th day, Yuna was finally allowed to leave the medical bay. She was still weak, and her skin still hurt in places, but she could walk on her own. She wanted to go back to her small room and sleep in her own bed, but when she stepped out of the medical bay, she found a crowd waiting for her. There were hundreds of beings standing in the corridor. Humans, Talari, Vorin, Keeley, and many other species she did not even recognize. They were all looking at her, and when they saw her, they started to clap. Yuna stopped walking. She did not understand what was happening. Why were all these people here? Why were they clapping for her? Then she saw them. The Tillery children. All 26 of them, standing at the front of the crowd with their parents. They were wearing clean clothes and their blue skin had returned to its healthy color. When they saw Yuna, they ran toward her. She was suddenly surrounded by small blue bodies and thin arms. The children were hugging her, all of them at once, making happy sounds that she did not understand but could feel in her heart. One of the children, a small girl with particularly bright silver eyes, looked up at her and spoke in the common language. "Thank you for saving us. You were so brave." Yuna knelt down so she could look at the girl's face. "I was not brave," she said honestly. "I was very scared." "But you helped us anyway," the girl said. "Even though you were scared?" That is what brave means. Yuna did not know how to respond to that. She had never thought about it that way before. The children's parents came forward next. They were crying, their translucent faces wet with tears. One by one, they took Yuna's hands in their forearmed grip and pressed their foreheads to her fingers. Yuna did not know what this meant, but it felt important. Kovan the teacher was there too. He looked healthy again, though there were tired lines on his face that had not been there before. He walked up to Yuna and stood in front of her for a long moment. "I remember," he said quietly. "I remember you pressing on my chest. I remember you breathing into my mouth. I remember your voice telling me to stay awake." "I did not know if I was doing it right," Yuna admitted. "Your body is different from human bodies." "You did it right enough," Kovan said. "I am alive because of you. My students are alive because of you. There are no words in any language that can express what that means to me." He reached into his robe and pulled out a small object. It was a crystal, blue and glowing, shaped like a flower. He placed it in Yuna's hands. "This is a memory stone," he explained. "It is the most precious thing my people can give. It means that as long as this stone exists, you will be remembered. Your name will be spoken by Tillery children for 1,000 years." Yuna looked at the crystal in her hands. It was beautiful and warm, like holding a piece of captured starlight. She did not know what to say. She was just a maintenance technician. She fixed pipes. She was not the kind of person who got remembered for 1,000 years, but the crowd was still clapping. The children were still smiling, and somewhere deep inside her heart, Yuna began to understand that her life had changed forever. She had walked into that room as a nobody. She had walked out as something else entirely. She did not know what that something was yet, but she knew that nothing would ever be the same. Again, she held the memory stone close to her chest and let the crowd's applause wash over her like a warm wave. For the first time since the incident, she allowed herself to smile. The news spread faster than Yuna could have imagined. Within hours of leaving the medical bay, her face was everywhere. Every screen on the station showed her picture. Every news channel in the sector was talking about her. The story of the human maintenance worker who saved 26 Talari's children was being shared across thousands of worlds. Yuna tried to hide in her small room, but it did not work. Her communication device would not stop making sounds. Messages came from everywhere. News organizations wanted to interview her. Important people wanted to meet her. Complete strangers sent her notes saying she was their hero. She turned off her device and sat on her bed in the dark. She did not want to be famous. She did not want attention. She just wanted to go back to fixing pipes and living her quiet life. Was that too much to ask? Apparently, it was. On the 5th day after the incident, someone knocked on her door. Yuna almost did not answer. She was tired of visitors, tired of people looking at her with shining eyes and telling her how wonderful she was. But the knocking continued, soft but persistent. She opened the door and found herself looking at 2 Talari guards in beautiful silver armor. They stood at attention on either side of her doorway, their faces serious and formal. "Park Yuna," one of them said. "Ambassador Lyra of the Talari Collective wishes to see you. Will you come with us?" Yuna blinked. An ambassador. That was a very important person. Much more important than a simple maintenance worker. Why would an ambassador want to see her? She thought about saying no. She could close the door and pretend she was not home. But that would be rude. And despite everything, Yuna had been raised to be polite. So she nodded and followed the guards. They led her through parts of the station she had never seen before. Beautiful corridors with walls made of something that looked like glass but was probably much stronger. Rooms filled with soft light and gentle music. This was the diplomatic sector, where the most important people on the station lived and worked. Finally, stopped in front of a large door decorated with Talari symbols. The door opened, and Yuna stepped inside. The room was enormous and beautiful. Soft blue light filled the space, and delicate plants from the Talari homeworld grew in crystal containers along the walls. In the center of the room stood a Talari woman wearing robes of white and gold. This was Ambassador Lyra. She was tall for her species. Her movements were graceful like a dancer. Her forearms were folded in front of her, and her large silver eyes watched Yuna carefully as she entered. "Park Yuna," the ambassador said. Her voice was soft and musical. "Thank you for coming." Yuna bowed her head slightly, the way she had seen other people do when meeting important officials. "Thank you for inviting me, Ambassador." Lyra smiled, a gentle expression that changed her whole face. "Please, sit. We have much to discuss." They sat on soft chairs that seemed to float just above the ground. Yuna was afraid to move too much, worried she might break something expensive. "I have watched the security recordings from that day," Lyra said. "I have seen what you did. I have watched you work to save those children over and over again. I cannot stop watching it." Yuna did not know what to say, so she said nothing. "Do you know what I found most remarkable?" Lyra continued. "It was not your bravery, though. That was impressive. It was not your quick thinking, though. That saved many lives. It was your face? My face?" Yuna asked, confused. "In the recordings, I could see your expression. You were terrified. Your hands were shaking. Your eyes were wide with fear. You knew you might die in that room. And yet you did not stop. You did not even slow down. You kept working, kept fighting, kept refusing to let those children go." Lyra leaned forward. "That is what makes you special, Park Yuna. Not the absence of fear, but the refusal to let fear win." Yuna felt her throat tighten. "I just did what anyone would do." Lyra shook her head slowly. "No, That is where you are wrong. When the gas began to leak, the Veloxy delegates sealed themselves in their quarters and waited. The station's security forces remained outside, waiting for proper equipment. Even some humans, I am sad to say, chose not to enter the contaminated zone. They were being careful, Yuna said. It was the smart thing to do. Perhaps, but my people's children would be dead if everyone had been that smart. Lyra stood up and walked toward Yuna. Her silver eyes were filled with emotion. You breathed poison so that they could live. You put your hands on death and pushed it away from them. Among my people, there is no greater gift. There is no higher honor. And then, to Yuna's complete shock, Ambassador Lyra knelt before her. The most powerful tillery in the sector, a woman who spoke for billions of her people, got down on her knees in front of a human maintenance worker. What are you doing? Yuna asked, her voice shaking. Please, get up. I am nobody important. You are wrong, Lyra said, still kneeling. This is the gesture we reserve for our greatest heroes. The ones who sacrifice for others without thought of reward. The ones who show us what it truly means to care for life. I am honored to perform it for you. Yuna felt tears in her eyes again. She did not know what to do with her hands or where to look. This was all too much. Too big. Too overwhelming. Lyra finally stood up and took Yuna's hands in her own. Her four-fingered grip was surprisingly warm. You must understand something, Park Yuna. What you did has changed things. Not just for you, but for your entire species. What do you mean? Yuna asked. For many years, my people and others have thought of humans as young and weak. A minor species, not yet ready to take an important place in galactic affairs. But you have shown us something different. You have shown us that humans possess something rare and precious. A kind of courage that cannot be taught. A love for life that crosses all boundaries. Lyra squeezed Yuna's hands gently. The Talari Collective is offering you citizenship. We want you to come live on our homeworld. We will give you a house, land, everything you need. We want you to be one of us. Yuna stared at her, unable to speak. Citizenship on an alien world. A houseland. It was more than she had ever dreamed of. More than she had ever thought possible. I do not know what to say, she finally managed. You do not need to decide now, Lyra said kindly. Take time. Think about it. Talk to your family on Earth, but know this. Whatever you choose, the Tillery will never forget you. Your name will be spoken in our homes and temples for as long as our species exists. You have our eternal gratitude, Park Yuna, and our love. Yuna left the ambassador's quarters in a daze. Her mind was spinning with everything she had heard. She walked through the beautiful corridors without seeing them, trying to process what was happening to her life. She was just a pipe fixer, a vent crawler, a nobody. But the galaxy seemed determined to tell her otherwise. 1 week after the incident, Yuna's life had become something she did not recognize. She could not walk through the station without being stopped by strangers. People wanted to touch her hand, take pictures with her, or simply stand near her and stare. Some of them cried when they saw her. Others gave her gifts she did not know what to do with. The news channels had given her many names. The human who would not wait. The guardian of Vera 7, the Death Walker. Every name was more dramatic than the last. Every story made her sound like a character from a movie rather than a real person. She hated it. She hated all of it. Yuna tried to go back to work. She put on her gray uniform, picked up her tool bag, and walked to the maintenance office like she had done every day for 3 months. But when she arrived, her supervisor told her she had been placed on special leave until further notice. Special leave? Yuna repeated. I do not want special leave. I want to fix things. I want to work. Her supervisor, a tired-looking human man named Ko Jimin, gave her a sad smile. I understand. But you have become too famous. If you go into the public areas to work, you will cause crowds. It is not safe for you or for station operations. So Yuna went back to her small room and stared at the walls. She felt trapped. The fame that everyone said was such a wonderful gift felt more like a cage. Her communication device would not stop receiving messages. requests for interviews from news organizations across the sector, invitations to parties and ceremonies on dozens of different worlds, proposals of marriage from species she had never even heard of. A Voran weapons company wanted to name a new starship after her. A Keeley fashion designer wanted to create a clothing line inspired by her. Yuna deleted message after message, but new ones kept appearing. She wanted to throw the device out of the window, but there was no window. She was in space. The only message she answered was from home. Her old co-worker, Kong Doan, called from Earth. His face appeared on her screen, familiar and comforting. He was sitting in what looked like a small apartment, and behind him she could see a window showing gray rain falling on a city street. "Look at you," Doan said, his voice filled with warmth and amusement. "A galactic hero. I always knew you would do something special. You did not know that?" Yuna replied, almost smiling for the first time in days. "You used to say I was the most boring person you had ever met. I take it back. All of it. You are officially the most interesting person I know." His expression became more serious. "How are you really doing?" "The truth." Yuna was quiet for a moment. With everyone else, she put on a calm face and said polite things. But Doan had known her for years. They had worked together, eaten lunch together, complained about difficult jobs together. She could not lie to him. "I am drowning," she admitted. "Everyone wants something from me. Everyone is looking at me. I cannot breathe. I cannot think. I did not ask for any of this." Doan nodded slowly. "I can imagine. Or actually, I cannot imagine. What you are going through is beyond anything I have ever experienced." "But Yuna, can I tell you something?" "What?" "Something is happening here on Earth. Something because of you." "Oh." Yuna frowned. "What do you mean?" "The way other species look at us is changing. I have friends who work in diplomatic corps, in trade missions, in cultural exchange programs. They all say the same thing. Aliens who used to ignore humans are suddenly paying attention. Species that thought we were weak and unimportant are reconsidering." Doan leaned closer to the screen. "One little human woman walked through poison and saved 26 children with nothing but duct tape and determination. That story's being told in schools and homes across hundreds of worlds. Children of species we have never met are learning about you, and they are learning that humans are something special." Yuna did not know how to respond to that. It was too big, too much to understand. "You did not just save those children," Doan continued. "You changed how the entire galaxy sees us. That is not a small thing. That is not something to run away from." After the call ended, Yuna sat alone in her room for a long time, thinking about what Doan had said. She had never thought about herself as a representative of humanity. She was just Yuna. Just one person. How could one person change how an entire species was seen? But the evidence was all around her. The Galactic Assembly, the organization that governed relations between all the species of the known galaxy, had sent her a formal invitation to speak at their annual summit. They wanted her to address representatives from over 100 different species. They wanted her to tell her story. Yuna read the invitation 5 times, sure she had misunderstood something. The Galactic Assembly was the most powerful organization in existence. Presidents and emperors begged for the chance to speak there. And they wanted to hear from her? She almost refused. The thought of standing in front of all those important beings and talking about herself made her feel sick with fear. But then she remembered what Doan had said. She thought about all the humans out there who were being looked at differently because of what she had done. She thought about what it might mean for humanity's future. Maybe this was not about her at all. Maybe it was about something bigger. Slowly, carefully, Yuna typed a reply to the invitation. She would speak at the summit. She did not know what she would say yet, but she would go the next day. She received a visit from Elder Coven. He looked much better than the last time she had seen him, though there was still a tiredness in his eyes that Yuna recognized. It was the same tiredness she saw in her own mirror. "How are you?" he asked, sitting across from her in her small room. "Everyone keeps asking me that," Yuna said. "I am tired. I am confused. I am scared." Coven nodded. "I understand. Fame is a heavy thing to carry, especially for those who did not seek it.
How are you handling it?
Yuna asked. You were there too. You survived too? I was unconscious for most of it, Cobbin replied with a gentle smile. My students remember you, not me. I am grateful for that. It allows me to remain in the background, where I am most comfortable. He reached out and touched her hand with one of his forearms. The children talk about you constantly. They call you the warm one. In our culture, warmth is the highest compliment. It means you carry life inside you and share it with others. Yuna felt tears in her eyes again. She had cried more in the past week than she had in the past 10 years combined. They want to see you again, Coven continued. Not in a crowd or a ceremony, just a simple visit, somewhere quiet. Would you be willing to do that? Yuna thought about the 26 small faces, the thin arms that had hugged her, the silver eyes that had looked at her with trust. She said, I would like that very much. For the first time in many days, she felt something other than exhaustion and fear. She felt something that might have been hope. 1 year had passed since the day that changed everything. Yuna stood on a stage looking out at hundreds of faces. Human faces, Tillery faces, Vorin faces, Keeley faces, and many others she had learned to recognize over the past months. They were all looking at her, waiting for her to speak. This was the opening ceremony of the Interspecies Emergency Response Academy, a new school built on a space station specifically designed for training. A place where beings from different species would learn to work together, to save lives together, to become heroes together, and it existed because of her. Yuna still had trouble believing that sometimes she still woke up in the morning expecting to put on her gray maintenance uniform and go fix pipes. But that life was gone now, replaced by something she never could have imagined. The year had been difficult and strange and wonderful. She had spoken at the Galactic Assembly Summit, her voice shaking as she told her story to representatives from over 100 species. She had expected them to be bored or unimpressed. Instead, they had listened in complete silence, and when she finished, they had stood and clapped for so long that she had not known where to look. After that, things had moved quickly. The Tillery proposed the idea of the academy first. They wanted to create a training program based on what Yuna had done. Not just the technical skills, but the mindset. The willingness to act when others hesitated. The refusal to accept that nothing could be done. Other species joined the project. Humans contributed their experience with emergency medicine and rescue operations. The Vorin provided funding and construction materials. The Keeley offered their knowledge of communication and coordination. Even species that rarely worked together found common ground in this shared goal, and through it all, people kept asking Yuna to be involved. To advise? To lead? To inspire, she had said no at first. Many times. She was not qualified for any of this. She was not a leader, or a teacher, or a symbol. She was just someone who had been in the wrong place at the right time and had refused to give up. But Coven had helped her understand something important. You do not need to be perfect, he had told her during one of their many conversations. You just need to be honest. Tell them what you felt. Tell them what you thought. Tell them what you learned. That is enough. So Yuna had agreed to be part of the academy. Not as a director or commander, but as something simpler. She would talk to the students, share her experience, remind them why they were there. Now she stood on the stage, looking at the first class of recruits. Young beings from a dozen different species, all wearing the same gray and blue uniforms. All looking at her with hope and curiosity in their eyes. She took a deep breath and began to speak. 1 year ago, I was nobody special. I fixed broken pipes on a space station. I crawled through vents and cleaned filters. I did not think about saving lives or being a hero. I thought about paying my bills and maybe one day buying a small house on Earth. The audience was silent, listening. Then something happened that changed everything. Not because I was brave or smart or special, but because I was there and I could not watch children die without trying to help them. That is all. That is the whole story. Yuna looked down at her hands. The same hands that had torn blankets and pressed oxygen to small blue faces. The scars from the chemical burns had faded, but she could still feel them sometimes. People call me a hero now. They say I did something amazing. But the truth is, I was terrified the entire time. My hands were shaking. My heart was pounding. I thought I was going to die in that room with those children. And I almost gave up many times. She looked back at the audience. But I did not give up. Not because I am stronger than anyone else, but because I kept thinking about those small faces looking at me, trusting me, believing that I would help them. I could not let them down. It was that simple. One of the Talari children from that day was in the audience. She was older now, taller, but Yuna recognized her immediately. It was the small girl who had told her what bravery meant. She sat in the front row with her parents, her silver eyes never leaving Yuna's face. The beings you will help in your careers will not care about your training scores or your awards, Yuna continued. They will care that you showed up, that you tried, that you refused to leave them alone in their moment of need. That is what this academy will teach you. Not just skills, but heart. Elder Coven stood up from his seat near the stage. He had become the Academy's cultural liaison, helping beings from different species understand each other. He looked healthy and proud, and when he spoke, his voice was strong. I was one of the people Park Yuna saved that day, he said. I watched her work. I saw her fear and her determination, and I can tell you that what she did cannot be found in any textbook. It came from somewhere deeper, somewhere that all of us can reach if we choose to. He turned to face the students. You are the first class of this academy. You carry a great responsibility. The galaxy is watching to see what you will become. But I believe in you. Because I have seen with my own eyes what becomes possible when beings choose to care for each other across all differences. The ceremony continued with speeches from other officials and leaders, but Yuna barely heard them. She was watching the students, seeing the determination in their young faces, the hope in their eyes. Afterward, she walked through the academy's halls. The building was beautiful, designed by architects from multiple species working together. Every corner held something that reminded her of that terrible day and the strange journey that had followed. She stopped in front of a wall, where they had placed a memorial. 26 names were written there in Tillery script, with translations in human language below. The names of the children she had saved. Beside each name was a small crystal, glowing with soft blue light. The girl from the audience found her there. She was almost as tall as Yuna now, growing fast the way Talari children did. Do you remember me? The girl asked. Of course, Yuna said. You told me what it means to be brave. The girl smiled. I was so scared that day. I thought I was going to die. But then you came, and you held me, and you said we were going to be okay. I believed you. Even though everything was terrible, I believed you. I am glad, Yuna said softly. I want to be like you when I grow up, the girl continued. I want to help people who are scared. I want to tell them it will be okay and make them believe it. Yuna felt tears in her eyes, but she did not try to hide them. That is a beautiful dream. I hope you achieve it. She walked outside later, standing on an observation deck that looked out at the stars. So much had changed. She was not the same woman who had woken up in a small room on Vera 7 1 year ago. She had seen things and done things and become things she'd never expected. But some things remained the same. She still loved looking at the stars. She still dreamed of a quiet house in the mountains. She still felt like an ordinary person living an extraordinary life. Maybe that was okay. Maybe heroes did not need to be perfect. Maybe they just needed to be willing to try. Yuna looked at the memory stone that Coven had given her. Still hanging around her neck after all this time, it glowed softly in the starlight, a piece of captured hope. She had not asked for any of this. She had not planned to become famous or change how the galaxy saw humanity. She had just done what needed to be done, and in the end, maybe that was enough. Maybe that was everything. The stars burned on, ancient and beautiful, as Yuna stood and watched them. Somewhere out there, a new generation was learning to be brave. And somewhere deep inside, she finally began to believe that she had earned her place among them.